All right, Chrystal Bell, we appreciate the time that you've given us this afternoon. I know you're on kind of basically the other side of the country, but nonetheless, the power of social media has brought us together. And as we've chatted before, we're obviously new to the franchise space, fairly new to the franchise space here at Junk Raider. You obviously have a lot more experience there, so we're eager to pick your brain a little bit about what it is that you do exactly, but also just your experience in the franchising space overall, and any advice that you can give us and our listeners as we all move through the world of franchising. So, thank you again for being on. And without further ado, Crystal, I'll turn it over to you for an intro.
Okay. Well, I have been in franchising for probably almost 10 years now.
Yep.
I've owned 3 franchises. I have sold the first 2, became a franchise consultant, and then purchased a third one after the fact.
Okay. Awesome. And why did you sell two of them, if you don't mind me asking?
So the first one I had was a property management franchise.
Yep.
I realized I hated property management. So I
Yep.
got in as an owner operator. I
Okay.
grew it from about 100 units to 250 over
Yeah.
2 years. And
Okay.
after we hit probably 200, I'm like, this is too much. I was yelled at constantly,
Yeah.
owners, tenants, everything.
Yeah.
And
I
there
can
was
imagine.
always a mess, always like broken everything. And
Hmm.
it was just not a happy industry.
Yeah. I can believe that. And what's an interesting follow-on question here, and probably a lot of lessons learned for you throughout that process. But on the front end of that, was there anything like disclosed or not disclosed that maybe would have helped you not move into property, make you come to the realization that you didn't want to be in that space before you bought the franchises, or was it just kind of was what it was once you got into it?
It was what it was when I got into it.
Yeah. Okay.
My husband wanted to get into it. It's a lucrative business.
Hmm.
Um, he likes real estate more than I do. And
Okay.
so we got in, and I was managing it full time. He
Hmm.
wasn't. And I
Yeah.
decided this isn't for me.
Right. Got it. So you sold two, and then you bought another one after you sold those. Another one being what? What are you in now?
So I bought a second franchise in healthy vending.
Okay.
I started with 6 vending machines, and after 6 months, I had 50.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I was able to grow it fast. The machines that I got and the locations were very active.
Hmm.
And when I bought the original 6, the sales guys said, passive income, no employees, just
Yeah.
fill as needed. When you have 50 machines, it is not passive. You need employees.
Yeah.
I had a warehouse full of food and drinks and everything you could think of, and I was
Hmm.
working 50 hours a week.
And you've since sold that one as well.
I
Right.
sold that to a family. They've been
Yeah.
successful with it, and
Amazing.
so yeah, that's how I got
Awesome.
into consulting.
I was
I
gonna say
wanted
that's a
to
nice. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted to help people avoid the franchises they would not be good at.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's got to be a nice background to tell or have the conversation with a candidate that is maybe looking at franchising and doing it, with the help of you consulting them. You've got that real world experience. Like I've lived this through 3 different brands and concepts, and I can help kind of guide you, which is very interesting. So, is the franchise consulting now what you do full time, or do you also dabble in some other things?
I hold on, sorry.
No worries.
Okay, oh, that's better. Okay, um, so franchise consulting is full time, and I have been doing it for over a year. And then during my process, my husband wanted to get into his own franchise. So we purchased the third franchise while I was
Okay.
consulting. But my goal is franchise consulting full time
Awesome.
and just helping people avoid the mistakes that I made when I got into my first two franchises.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your role now in consulting and how that is similar or is vastly different from your experience as a franchisee, like with your time, what you like, enjoy doing? I know when you were a franchisee, at least on the property management side, a lot of headaches, people, probably complaining and you just having to put out fires left and right. But now that you're a consultant and you're kind of on the forefront of helping folks look for brands that they might buy into, what do you like more about what you're doing now versus what you used to be doing as a franchisee?
Um, I like being able to help people. That is my number one goal with
Mm,
anything I do. I own my own businesses. I do consulting for property management. I do consulting for small business development center in Colorado. So ultimately, my goal is trying to help people get into business. I don't think there's enough education out there for people. I don't think that everyone, when they grow up, they don't say, I want to be a business owner. But when you start working for people and working for corporations, you start realizing, I don't want to work for anybody. I want to do
yeah.
this for myself. I want to make money for myself. But
Mm,
nobody knows how to do that. Nobody knows who to go to, who to like just pick their brains. How do I do this? I've
yeah.
done it multiple times. So when I got into franchise consulting, it's like I want to do this to help people realize what is out there for franchising. Franchising is
Hmm.
really hard for a lot of people. You always hear somebody that got into a concept that was a scam or that somebody lost so much money. And
Yeah.
I think helping people realize what franchising can do for them instead of doing a business startup that everyone's like, oh, I can start this business on my own. I can create any franchise that's out there. I can redo it. But it's like, okay, maybe you can.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't have the systems in place. You have to start from scratch. You have to come up with your own marketing. You have to come up with your own support team because you don't have support when you start from scratch, when you have nothing to do. So,
Yeah.
what my goal is and what I want to do with consulting is making sure, are they asking the right questions of the franchisors? Are they validating the right way with current franchisees? Are they asking the right questions, getting the right feedback? It's
Hmm.
for the franchisor and for the franchisee. You want to make sure it's a cohesive team. You're going to be working together for years. You want to
Yeah.
make sure that the franchisor is providing good support for you as a franchisee. You want to make sure that you have open communication because business is business and it's not going to be easy all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
all of the franchises I've been with, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be times when I didn't agree with what the system looked like.
Hmm.
But if the franchisor is able to explain to me, this is why we do it this way, if they're able to communicate instead of just saying, you know what, this is how it is, this is how you're going to do it,
Hmm.
if they can communicate well to me and say, we do it this way because X, Y, and Z, and we know that it works.
Yeah.
Perfect. If that works for you, then it's going to work for me. But if the franchisor is like, you know what, we bought the system, we're going to switch it, we're going to do this, but they can't give me feedback as to why they're switching it.
Yeah.
So that helping people look at franchise concepts to say, okay, can you get into this system and trust that they're going to give you the feedback that you need and trust that they're going to give you the support and answer your questions instead of just saying, this is the way it is, you just got to do it this way.
Yeah. There's a
So I want
huge
to be there to help them.
That's great. Yeah, and there's a huge evaluation process that candidates have to go through. And on the franchisor side, our side, we want you to take a deep dive. At least, I guess I'll say with air quotes, like the good franchisors, the folks that want to do it right. We want those candidates to take as deep a dive into this evaluation with us and anybody else they're looking at, just like we're taking a deep dive into each and every candidate. Because at the end of the day, you're right. This is a long-term partnership. Most of the time, 10 years, right? It's a contract for 10 years and you're getting married and you both rely on each other for the success of the other. So yeah, totally get it. And that's exactly why folks like you are incredibly helpful through that process and very much needed. So thank you for your service in the franchise space. But, I'm curious, are you seeing a trend with the candidates you work with in terms of like where they're gravitating towards in terms of industries? Like, or are you helping, are folks all over the board? Like, is it restaurant or retail or home services or, health and wellness? Like, are you seeing the folks you work with for whatever reason getting more interested in one particular segment over the other, or is it still kind of all over the board?
Right now, it's still all over the board. I notice a lot more people want to avoid brick and mortar spaces. I mean,
Yeah.
there are still some really good concepts that they are drawn to that are still brick and mortar, but a lot of people that I work with, they don't want to put the huge upfront investment on something really like huge brick and mortar wise. Some people are
Right.
willing to do like the real estate play franchises where they're investing in the real estate, knowing that it's going to be a long term asset. But most of the people that I work with want slightly lower investment level, maybe home based or the light office space rental. So you're not having huge overhead, and it could be home services or it could be
Hmm.
just family type businesses. And
Yeah.
it's kind of hard, like, when it comes to, does somebody go into it wanting money versus passion? I think it's all dependent on the person, but right now I think a lot more people are leaning towards the concepts that are not brick and mortar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would have guessed. Just based on, especially the last 3 to 4 years of like what we're coming out of with COVID, I think it shined a light on the industries that aren't aren't as impacted by things like that none of us really could have forecasted, um, which is interesting. What's the biggest like aha moment that folks have when they start working with you and you start educating them on just the franchise space in general, different brands and concepts? Like, is there a trend there with, most folks don't know this about franchising, or most folks, thought one thing and that's not actually accurate? Anything come to mind with like just candidates having a light bulb moment?
I mean, it all depends on what they know personally about franchising. I would say the biggest hurdle to get over initially when people are looking at franchises versus like startup businesses, a lot of people, when they are like, oh, I can start up a business for like nothing.
Hmm.
Technically, yes, but they're not counting like how much money they're putting into the new marketing, how much money they're putting into the systems and finding out and the trial and error to get those started. But the biggest, I think, the thing that scares people the most when it comes to franchising is the initial sticker price.
Yeah.
But as a good consultant, and any good consultant can help them understand, you are not investing your own personal money per se in most of those.
Hmm.
So I work with people and say, you know what? It's a business. And if you can get a business loan and have that business
Yeah.
use itself to pay the loans, like, it's easier to leverage the business against itself in getting the loans. So
Yeah.
when somebody sees a sticker price of maybe $200,000, a lot of the
Mhm.
time they're just shocked and they're like, I don't have that kind of money. You
Right.
don't need that kind of money. You just
Hmm.
need a good finance person that can help you find the good loans, um, get business lines of credit, get all, line things up ahead of time
Yeah.
so that the sticker price is not the shocking factor. Because that's what
Mhm.
if you put somebody in a retail space, a lot of retail space can be over $500,000. But when
Yeah.
people see that sticker, they're like, I don't want that. That's too much. I
Hmm.
understand. We're not asking you to pay that much money out of pocket.
Yeah.
What you need to do is find funding that can help cover that. And that's where I think the biggest hurdle for a lot of them when they see those numbers
Yeah.
is where it's like, hey, don't worry about the investment. Yes, it is an investment, but you're not using your own personal money. You need
Yeah.
to find ways to fund it that you are comfortable with.
It's like educating a first time home buyer, right? They don't know
Exactly.
all of the options available to, they may show up at the closing table and literally have nothing that they have to put down based on unique strategies and whatnot. Or if they do, it's very minimal. So I totally get it. What I thought was interesting that I heard recently on another podcast, I think, was this concept of just looking at that standard franchise fee. Let's just use 50 grand as a industry average, if you sign a 10-year agreement at 50K for the franchise fee that's due up front, to your point, you can get funding for that as well. You don't necessarily have to come out of pocket for it. But if you're like looking at the sticker price, another way to think about it is 50 grand over a 10-year period. So really you're investing, I know it's due up front, but you're really investing in something that somebody's built that you're able to have access to for the next 10 years. So look at it as like a 5 grand per year investment versus like a course, maybe, right? And junk removal is what I use the example of. Like you're getting our 6 years of experience memorialized into things like ops manuals, our IP, our systems and processes, our technology, our marketing prowess. If you go and buy a junk or how to start a junk removal business course, maybe for 20 grand, 10 grand, heck, whatever, like you get that packet and that's it. You're left to your own devices. Like there's nobody there to help coach. There's nobody there to support. They likely haven't been in junk removal very long before they develop the course. And that's also due up front. So you're out 20 grand, you got this book, and now you got to figure out how to go implement it. There's a huge difference between that and somebody being with you in the field or remotely while you're in the field running a junk removal business day in and day out that you can call on and be like, look, I'm in front of this customer, they said this, like how do you typically handle that in like real time? Let's get the answer and knock it out. Totally different. So just another way to look at it. On the franchisor side, what are, I know you mentioned some of this a little early in the episode, but like on the franchisor side, what are you seeing in terms of like the standard mistakes that we're doing as franchisors when we bring on new franchisees or when we're working with consultants like you to identify potential candidates? What are some of like the common mistakes that we're making as franchisors?
I would say the biggest, and it's happened literally with every single franchise that I've worked with, and being on the one that we are on currently, we've already learned our trials through that. The biggest one is setting up the new franchisees to be successful. A lot of franchisees, when they come in, they're excited. They are ready to go. They want the grand opening. They're ready for all this to happen immediately, which I get. But I would say prepping them appropriately because things are going to happen within the first, probably, depending on the industry, I would say 2 to 4 weeks of
Mm-hmm.
startup that nobody's going to anticipate. With my vending machines, anytime I placed a vending machine, I set the ground rules for my location saying I'm going to guarantee that this machine is going to have probably 5 error codes. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
vend correctly. You're going to have stuck product because it takes the machine and the location to just work through those kinks and have things work efficiently. And
Yeah.
so I would say prepping them after training to say, guess what? You are going to have things happen that we have no control over, you have no control over. Just be
Mm-hmm.
prepared and maybe start things a little more slowly
Yeah.
because it's going to shock them enough to be really upset with the franchisor and say,
Yeah.
you didn't tell me this, or um, this happened to us. Why didn't you prep us for this? Like, you can't tell the future and say, oh, guess what? You're going to have a tire blowout on your vehicle on the first week. But giving them a fair, I don't even know how to best say it, but just giving them fair expectations that your first few weeks are going to be stressful, they're going to be
Yeah.
hard, but you're going to get through it and you're going to be able to pull through and be a better
Yeah.
owner because you worked through that blown out tire or you worked through um I don't whatever the industry, it could be
Yeah.
literally anything.
Yeah.
But I would say that's the biggest thing. Yes, get them excited, get them prepped for opening their new business. I think that's great, but also set fair expectations for them, their customers.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm just going to use the example, the most recent franchise we've been a part of. We just opened. Technically, we opened after Thanksgiving, but because of issues that have come up with our process, we don't get to have our first event, our first opening until tomorrow because things didn't happen the way they should
Yeah.
have happened. We
Right.
had malfunctions. equipment breaking, we had all this stuff. And knowing what we've known from the past franchises, we didn't plan to have events until a few weeks after we were ready because we wanted to make
Yeah.
sure, does the equipment work? Is it prepared right? Business licensing in different cities and all of that kind of stuff. It
Hmm.
all came tumbling down. And I think, everybody wants to be excited, and I get that, but setting that expectation that things are going to come up is going to ease the burden on the franchisor side.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm sure you see it. You probably get support calls as soon as a new franchisee gets started. The support calls start rolling in, and sometimes it's as simple as, "I don't know how to turn on this computer," or whatever it is. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, hopefully a lot of that, I don't want to say it's mitigated because the issues are still going to persist. You're absolutely right. You're going to run into stuff that is unforeseen, but hopefully a lot of the personality stuff is identified in your process and also in our process on the franchisor side. Like just by talking with you, I can tell your demeanor is such that like things are going to come your way and you are able to absorb those way better than some other folks that are a little bit more chip on my shoulder. I don't like conflict, like you know what I mean, like so on a personality level we have a responsibility to our brand, of course, but also to the candidates themselves, that like if we know things are going to pop up, and we're also back to that evaluation thing, we're evaluating you from a business acumen perspective. Also, can you do the work in the field, but just personality, like do you have the chops to withstand the ebbs and flow of the business, and especially in the early days when you don't know what you're doing. So that absolutely is something that we have a responsibility to check off in our process. Can you talk to us a little bit about, as a consultant, your sales process to attract candidates that are looking into business ownership and franchising? How you maybe, what avenues you use to find folks? Is it on social media? Is it LinkedIn? Is it paid Google ads? Like how do you get folks in the boat? And then how do you start to kind of, I don't want to say weed out because that makes it sound like these folks are a number, but you obviously have to be selective with the types of candidates you work with because your name is on the line. What's that whole process just generally look like for you?
um, every franchise consultant is completely different.
Yeah.
I went into this business with the idea I didn't want to pay for leads. I feel like there's a lot of consultants out there that are paying for leads through LinkedIn and other avenues. I am, I will say, during the pandemic, I never did Zoom calls. My business was in vending during the pandemic. So I was still out in the
Mhm.
world working and meeting people and seeing people. So this um, online side of things of getting leads has not been very attractive to me when it comes to meeting people. So right
Yeah.
now, all of my candidates that have come in have been referred leads or through networking, and
Mhm.
it has been very successful. And when I have those candidates come to me, they already know a little bit about my background, so they kind of know what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. They are a lot more ready. They know, okay, when I'm ready to start a business, I'm going to go to Chrystal. She's going to be able to
Yeah.
get me started, and we go through that process fairly quick. I don't have a lot of people that are like, oh, I've been thinking about it and I'm not really sure what my timeline is.
Mhm.
So I feel like a lot of the contacts that I get, because it's through personal reference and because I also like anybody that refers things to me, they know my timeline, they know my process. A lot of them have seen my process. I
Yeah.
don't just say, hey, I'm going to match you with a bunch of franchises. You're just going to go with it. I actually sit down with all of my candidates for at least 2 hours, if not longer. And really, how are you with business? Have you ever owned a business? Have you ever looked at franchising or looked at starting your own thing? Like, I want to know how, kind of like as a franchisor side, are they going to be good business people? And
Mhm.
really through that process and going through this is, and I tell them, these are my steps. I need you to follow these steps. If you don't follow these steps, I don't think you're going to be as committed to this process. And if you're going to get into a business for years, you need to be committed to this process. And so,
Yeah.
a lot of the time through my early stages, they kind of weed themselves out. There will be people that get through a few meetings with franchisors and realize this is a little more time than I was willing to commit, or
Yeah.
maybe this is not quite for me at this time. And we kind of get through that. But really, I can get rid of a lot of the looky loos in the early stages by saying, I don't think you're quite ready yet. When you are, come back to me. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
That
I
makes a
don't
lot
want
of
to
sense.
waste my time, and I don't want to waste their time, just like you guys don't want to waste any of your time. So the leads that
Yeah.
I get are a little more committed to the process before I get them.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have a lot of admiration for consultants and what you do, just like I do for like real estate agents, because there's a lot of hand holding and evaluation that goes into something that you don't know if it's going to yield positive ROI for your time. You know, like a real estate agent could work for 3 months showing homes to a potential buyer, and then they're just like, we're going to hold off for now. You know, it's just wasted time. Just like if you work a candidate through 2, 3, 4 calls, they, you know, fill out forms for you. You guys meet in person for coffee or whatever it is. You coordinate with the franchisors and the brands, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you know what? I've got this, you know, my wife wants to send my child to a private school. And so I've got this new expense. I can't be doing this debt thing. So I have a lot of admiration for you guys. So, and it's a unique business to run, and you are running your own business there. So let's wrap it up with this, Crystal. What, you know, I always like to ask at the end, if you could tell your younger self, whether that was a younger self 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, anything of just like, hey, this would be good for you to know as you work through your journey here, what would that be for you?
Honestly, I would say the biggest thing for anybody, if you want to get into starting a business, and I would have told myself before I did the property management, before I did vending, you need to find a consultant. Don't just try to do it on your own. That is the biggest thing, because if I would have had somebody say, you should not get into vending because you're telling me this, but this is not that model.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would have talked me out of it. I mean, obviously it was successful. I was able to sell it, and,
Right.
I did really well at it, but there's different people. And so some people, when I'm going to use myself as an example, if I'm going to buy a business, I'm all in. I'm going to push it. I'm going to make sure that I'm meeting the goals that I need to do. I'm going to make sure I follow the system to
Hmm.
be successful. I'm not going to let it fail. But not everyone's like that. Some people see a system and are like, I'm buying a system. I'm going to do this, and it's going to
Hmm.
automatically make me money. And they're
Right.
failing. I don't
Yeah.
want to have people fail. And so making sure that those people, anyone is meeting with a consultant to say, is this right for you? I need you to seriously reflect on, how does your future look like? What are your goals? I wish somebody would have been there for me saying, maybe not do these. Let's
Yeah.
find you something that's going to be good. And if it takes longer for that person, if I'm like, I want to do something right now, okay, I know you want to do something, but maybe let's wait a month or two and just go through a couple more options just to make sure that you are finding that right choice. So that's, I wish somebody would
Sure.
have been there for me, been there in my
Yeah.
corner saying no, keeping
Yeah.
me grounded.
Yeah. Mentors are needed at every step of the way in terms of just your life journey. So I couldn't agree more there. Out of curiosity, how did you find your buyer for the vending machine? Was it a online Facebook group? Did you go through a business broker? How did you find the buyer for the vending machine business?
Biz buy sell. I just
Who did I
posted.
tell?
It wasn't. It was one of those. I'm successful right now. The business is doing great. I can either sell it if somebody wants it, or I'm just going to keep it and keep growing it and just reevaluate myself. Am I going
Mhm.
to hire somebody to do this, or am I going to continue doing it myself? So
Mhm.
I posted it, for sale by owner on Biz Buy Sell. I had quite a few people say, yes, I want to get into vending.
Yeah.
And I mean, luckily, I was honest with everyone. I'm like, I'm just gonna tell you right now, this is not what all the podcasts and webcasts. Like, this is
Yeah.
not what all the people online are saying. It's hard work and it's a lot of work. And they're like, we're fine. We all
Yeah.
understand, every single one of them's like, we understand it's going to be not
Yeah.
passive. So,
It's good. Yeah, I'm always curious about the business acquisition process and how that goes. If it's for sale by owner, if it's through a broker. So appreciate the insight there. But Chrystal, thanks so much for joining us. We'll wrap that up now. If you want folks to find you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
um, they can find me on LinkedIn. Or they can go to, have, I work under FranChoice. They can
Mm-hmm.
go to my bio. It's franchoice.com/cbell. Um, or they can call my business number, 970-405-0982. And I'd be willing to chat with anybody. My services
Awesome.
is no charge, and I'll sit with anyone if they have any questions about anything. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you again for joining us. We'll make sure to link all that in the podcast episode. And yeah, we'll let you get back to your day and what you're doing. Thanks so much, Chrystal.
all right. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right.